My wife filed for divorce while I was deployed. She had no idea what was coming. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, which I know because mail day in our forward operating base was always Tuesday and Thursday, and the guys had a whole ritual around it. Someone would make bad instant coffee. Someone else would complain about the bad instant coffee, and we would all sit around and pretend we weren't desperate to hear from home. I was 29 years old, 8 months into a 14-month deployment, and I had not spoken to my wife in 11 days. That was not unusual. Communication went dark for stretches. You got used to it the way you got used to a lot of things over there, by simply not thinking about it too hard. The letter was from a law office in Georgia. I recognized the return address because it was 3 blocks from the house we had bought together 2 years before. I had driven past that building 100 times without ever thinking I would one day hold something with its name on the envelope. My name is Marcus. I was a staff sergeant in the United States Army, and I want to tell you what happened when my wife tried to end our marriage while I was 7,000 miles away, and what she didn't know I had been quietly doing for the 6 months before she made that decision. Claire and I had been married for 4 years when I got the deployment orders. We had met at a cookout at a mutual friend's house. She was laughing at something when I first saw her, head thrown back, completely unself-conscious about it. I thought, that is a person who has figured something out that I haven't. I introduced myself 17 minutes later. She told me that was an oddly specific number to remember. I told her I had been working up the nerve for 16 of them. We were engaged within a year, married the following spring. The first 2 years were good, genuinely good. The kind of good that makes you stop sometimes in the middle of an ordinary evening and feel almost guilty about it, like you don't quite deserve something this uncomplicated. Then the orders came. Claire had always known this was part of the life. She had known it before she married me. We had talked about it in the way people talk about hard things when those hard things are still theoretical, honestly, but at a comfortable distance. When it became real, the distance disappeared, and so did the comfort. She struggled with the deployment in ways I don't think either of us fully anticipated. She was alone in a house that had been built around 2 people. She was working full-time and managing everything herself. I wasn't there to notice when she was tired or scared or felt like the walls were pressing in. I heard her voice twice a week when the connection allowed it, and voices alone don't carry everything. By month 4, the calls had gotten shorter. By month 6, there were silences in them that hadn't been there before. Pauses where I could hear her deciding not to say something. I told myself it was the distance. I told myself it was the stress. I told myself a lot of things that were partially true and therefore easier to believe than the full truth. The full truth arrived in that envelope on a Tuesday. The letter informed me, in the flat professional language of legal documents, that Claire had filed for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences and requested an uncontested proceeding. There was a line near the bottom about provisions for active duty service members, and a note that my response window was extended under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. I sat with that letter for a long time. Long enough that the bad instant coffee got cold, long enough that my buddy Terrence, who had been watching me from across the room, came over and sat down without saying anything, which is the particular kindness that soldiers learn after enough deployments. I didn't tell anyone else what was in it. I folded it back up and put it in the inside pocket of my jacket, close to my chest, which I am aware is the kind of thing that sounds melodramatic, but is exactly what I did. Here is what Claire didn't know. 6 months before I deployed, I had started quietly setting things in motion, not because I had any premonition about divorce. I had no such premonition. I did it because my grandmother had always told me that love was not a feeling you waited on, but a decision you kept making, and because I had been watching too many guys in my unit come home to lives that had quietly fallen apart while they were gone. Not from infidelity or catastrophic failure, but from the slow erosion of feeling seen. I had contacted a financial planner and restructured our savings in a way that would give Claire complete access and visibility while I was gone, with automatic updates sent to her each month, so she always knew exactly where we stood. I had written her 43 letters before I left, one for every week of the deployment, sealed and dated, left in a shoebox in our bedroom closet with a note on top that said "Open one each Sunday." I had called her mother, whom I had not always found easy to get along with, and asked her to check in on Claire weekly. I had arranged with our neighbor Ron, a retired contractor, to handle any maintenance issues at the house and build everything to a separate account I had set up specifically for that purpose. I had recorded myself reading 4 of her favorite books, chapter by chapter, on an old MP3 player I left on her nightstand, because she had once told me in passing that she loved being read to but felt embarrassed asking for it. I had done all of this without telling her, not to be secretive, but because I wanted her to discover it gradually, to find these things the way you find wildflowers growing somewhere unexpected. Not all at once, but piece by piece. She had apparently not opened the shoebox. I found that out later. She told me she had seen the note on top and assumed it was something deployment-related, administrative, and had not looked inside. The letters had sat there for 8 months untouched. From the fob, I did something I had never done before. I called in a favor with a chaplain I trusted, a man named Father Dominic, who had about as much nonsense tolerance as a brick wall and about the same amount of warmth hidden underneath. I asked him to help me get a non-emergency call through to Claire outside the normal communication windows. He made it happen within 48 hours, which tells you something about Father Dominic. When Claire picked up, she sounded like a person bracing for a difficult conversation they had been rehearsing. I didn't give her the conversation she had rehearsed. I told her about the shoebox. I told her to go to the closet and open it. She was quiet for a moment, and I heard the sound of her moving through the house. The familiar creak of the 3rd floorboard in the hallway, which still gets me when I think about it, that I knew exactly which board she had just stepped on from 7,000 miles away. She found the box. She lifted the lid. There was a long silence. "Marcus," she said. "Yeah," I said. "There are 43 letters in here, one for each week." Another silence. "I've been so angry at you," she said, and her voice broke on the last word in the way voices break when anger and grief and something softer are all trying to come out at the same time. "I know," I said. "I didn't know how to be in this house without you in it." "I know that too," I said. "I should have made it easier. I tried to, but I should have told you what I was trying instead of just trying it." She didn't say anything for a while. I could hear her opening one of the letters. I had written the first one on the night before I left, sitting at the kitchen table after she had gone to bed, trying to put into words all the things that get crowded out by the dailiness of being together, the things you mean to say and keep not saying, because there's always tomorrow, and tomorrow has always shown up before. I don't know exactly what she read that night. I know what I wrote, but hearing it back through someone else's experience of it is a different thing. What I know is that she called Father Dominic the next morning and asked him to pass along a message to me. The message was 3 words: "Don't sign anything." We spent the next 6 weeks communicating more honestly than we had in probably 2 years of marriage. Not because deployment had made us better at it, but because we had finally run out of the comfortable distance that lets you avoid the conversations you need to have. She told me she had felt invisible. I told her I had been so focused on making things easier for her logistically that I had forgotten to make her feel known. She told me she had filed the papers on a day when she felt so alone that it seemed like the loneliness was permanent and structural. built into the architecture of the life we had chosen. Impossible to renovate. I told her about the recorded books on the MP3 player. She had found it early in the deployment and assumed it was something I had bought for her before we were married and forgotten to mention. She had listened to all 4 books over the course of 3 months without realizing it was my voice reading them to her. When I told her, she made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not quite a laugh and not quite a cry, but something that lived in the complicated space between them. "That was you," she said. "That was me," I said. She withdrew the divorce filing 11 days later. I came home 5 months after that on a Tuesday, which felt right, because the whole thing had started on a Tuesday, and there is something satisfying about a circle that closes on its own terms. She was standing in the driveway when the car pulled up. She was holding the shoebox. We stood there for a moment in the driveway of the house that had been too quiet for too long, and I thought about my grandmother telling me that love was a decision you kept making. I thought about 43 letters sitting unopened in a closet. I thought about a creak in the 3rd floorboard. I thought about how close we had come. And then I stopped thinking about all of that and just stood in the driveway with my wife, in the particular silence of 2 people who have pulled something back from the edge and are still a little stunned to find themselves on solid ground. The letters are framed now. Not all 43 were not quite that sentimental, but the first one and the last one hang on the wall in our kitchen, where I see them every morning when I make coffee. The coffee, for the record, is significantly better than anything I had on deployment. Some things you don't fully appreciate until you almost lose them. That's true of coffee. It's true of a lot of things.